allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Orr, roll call, please.
Ms. Cruz?
Here.
Mrs. Dixon?
Here.
Ms. Fox? Present. Ms. Hume?
Here.
Mr. Schuster?
Present.
Mrs. Welby?
Here.
Mrs. Janney?
Yes, I hear.
Ms. Martin?
Present.
8 present.
Very much. The purpose of this special meeting is for the board vacant seat and has been duly advertised. We do not have any speakers signed up this evening, so if we may ask our candidates to be sequestered into our caucus room at this time.
I do want to say that we had 4 candidates and I have 3 that signed in. Is there any that did not sign in?
Okay, thank you.
We'll follow Mr. Doherty.
Can someone say it? Is one of them staying now?
No, not yet. We'll come back for another meeting.
Jenny, you have the order they've signed in,
Yes, I
correct? Okay, I'm just making sure you cover it
Yeah.
over with something else here. Okay, everyone has their information and their sheets, you're all set? Okay, very good. May we have our first candidate, please?
The first candidate's going to be Dorothy Burrell.
Can we get the door, please? The door, oh, you should get this one. Oh, thank you. Dorothy, if you're comfortable there, you may stay or you may come to the podium, whichever you prefer. You
I'll
have-
stay here.
Very good. You have 2 minutes for an opening statement, and then we each have some questions for you.
Okay, great. So, when I first learned about this vacancy, the reason I was interested is I do have 11 plus years in this area in both education and workforce development. I was a former Scranton School District teacher for 4.5 years, so I do know what the teachers are up against in the district. But then also in my current day job at PA Career Link Lackawanna, I work with 17 to 24-year-old youth that primarily are coming right out of the Scranton School District, either as high school dropouts or graduates looking for additional training or support. So again, I do come with the very unique perspective of seeing it from current and very recent graduates, that, you know, what they need and what they want out of the school district.
Thank you very much. I will be asking a question on Mrs. Yanni's behalf, just so it can be heard. What is your motivation for coming forward at this time to serve on the school board?
Definitely my motivation is, recently I got involved with Junior League of Scranton last year as a provisional member, the first year that we served. And that really reignited my ability to be interested in serving the community that I've lived in my whole entire life.
Thank you. Ron?
Hi, you're probably aware, if you're working with these, that we are facing an enormous funding shortfall and we're in financial recovery. The district really needs to ensure that the state gives us fair funding. Do you have any ideas on how we as a board can work to try and achieve a fair level of funding from the state?
That's a very good.
I'm sorry, it was too specific, I'll pull it back.
No,
and-
no, that's
and
okay.
question. That's,
So definitely, I think communication is key. Definitely, transparency needs to happen so that everyone is aware of what is currently going on. But also, everyone at this point needs to pull together. There can be no more bickering of, well, we're the teachers, we're the students, we're the board. We all need to work together for the betterment of the school district.
that's a great answer, thank you.
What do you feel are the challenges facing our school district? And the second part of that, which is not really is if you did get this appointment tonight in 2 years, would you plan on running for election?
So to answer your first question, living in the community that my whole entire life, I have seen firsthand some of the issues that we know people are leaving Scranton. Also, we're up against a school district where students do come from diverse cultural and socioeconomical backgrounds, meaning that there are students in the district that, unfortunately for them, they are not going home to the most, safe environment or the most financially secure environment, and what they're getting in school might be the only thing they're eating for the night. And then to answer your second part of the question, I don't know, because if you had told me a year ago I would be sitting here tonight doing this, I would have told you absolutely not. But I would definitely consider it.
Gretchen?
So if faced with the decision to cut a specific program or services, what type of data would you look to help you make that decision?
Definitely I would want to see what the program or services had done or is currently doing for the students of the Scranton School District. But also, we are at a point in the school district where we have to look at the bottom line sometimes and make those hard decisions. And sometimes coming up with creative ways of working collaboratively with other nonprofits, for example, or other things like that to get the funding to keep a program might be beneficial. But if it came down to unfortunately having to make that decision, as long as the data proved that that was the right decision, it would have to come down to the firm and cut.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Grove. Thank you so much for your courage and your willingness to apply for this vacancy. As you just said, you are a lifelong resident of the city of Scranton, and in your application letter, you said you were a 2003 graduate of West Scranton School. So with that background, what do you believe are the strengths of our school district?
Definitely, it's the students, but also the teachers that put themselves out there every day to support the students in becoming the leaders of tomorrow. For example, I've seen countless of times with being friends with many of the teachers and watching the posts come across the Scranton School District Facebook pages, all the different programs and innovations that are coming out. Definitely there is potential there, and definitely I can say working with the Scranton School District students, they are the ones that come out of high school, coming to our building knowing exactly what they want and how to advocate for that.
So my question for you is, we will be under financial recovery for the length of this term, so how do you believe that that will potentially impact your service?
Definitely I would be interested in assisting any way I possibly could. With the financial recovery, I think that that is something that the district needs at this time in order to sustain themselves for the future.
And finally, my own question. We're in a very unique position here. Ordinarily, the public chooses the people who sit in these seats, and we all have to make it work. Now, we are faced with hand-selecting individuals who suit the needs of this particular board. Knowing a little bit about what goes on here, as I'm sure you've been paying attention to the news and do even know some of us personally, what quality, skills, and experience do you bring to this specific group of people on the board at this time?
Definitely, recently I've become a leader, not only stepping up to lead the provisional project for a junior league of Scranton, but also a leader at work. In both roles, I had to work with teams of women, which could be challenging at times, especially when they have diverse characteristics and diverse wants and needs. So, with that being said, I definitely think I would bring a sense of collaboration to the board, but also continued support for the transparency and communication that has been happening.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. We can have our next candidate, please.
Mr. McAndrew.
No, just the one that was. The length of the term is 2 years. Yes. It is the rest of Mark's, but he and I ran at and Barb ran at the same time.
Oh.
So we're right at the halfway.
I swear someone said something else, that's all.
This one with the names.
I was like, okay, how long was it?
Never a few times, but I am a sustainer in the league now, which means all I do is pay my dues and show up and smile. Cheerlead. I don't have to go to meetings anymore, I don't have to haul anything. I just support. How are you?
Good, how you doing today?
Well, thank you. You have 2 minutes for an opening statement,
Okay.
and then we have some questions for you.
Sounds good. I'm Sean McAndrew. I've been living in Scranton my entire life. I purchased my home here. I graduated from Penn State with my bachelor's degree in business marketing and management, and I also received a graduate certificate in public budgeting and finance. I'm former president and member of the Scranton Parks and Rec Board. The reason I'm here today is very excited to help our district get back on track. I know throughout the past few years, there's been some negativity surrounding the district, but you can feel momentum and a breath of fresh air with brand new directors, 3 returning strong directors. We have a brand new superintendent, and we have Dr. Finance Recovery Plan. I know it's not going to be easy. I know there's a lot of hurdles, a lot of financial hurdles with long-term debt. We also are, the fair funding, we're short of thousands of dollars per student, and with, close to $10,000, that's millions of dollars we're not getting. I think with my education and the background on that, I could roll up my sleeves and help out with the finances on day one. And, with being on the Parks and Recs board, I understand policy and procedure, which I think is one of the most important things that a school board director has to follow. I understand that this isn't just a few meetings a month, it's a 24/7 commitment, and I really just want to ensure, academic excellence for our students that are currently in the district and in the future, and hopefully one day my own children.
Thank you. I am going to ask a question on behalf of Mrs. Yanni, who is on the telephone, just so that it's more
Sure.
clear.
No problem.
What has motivated you to come forward at this time to apply to serve on the school?
I think it's just the change of, the dynamic of the board. I think it's great that we have, a lot of new members, and I think that, with the recovery plan and there's, like I said earlier, there's a lot of momentum. There's changes that we know have to be made, and the board is making the correct steps to get us back on track. So I'm very excited to see where it goes, and I just really want to be a part of the process.
As you know, well, you just mentioned in your speech the fair funding. How do you think we as a board and we as a district should be working to try and achieve a fair funding level from the state?
Yeah, well, the first thing is contacting our state reps, contacting our senators, and, coming together as one united board with ideas, and there's a fight on our hands. We have to, again, compared to other districts of our size, we're getting thousands of dollars less. Well, why is that happening to our children or our students? So I think it's just coming together with a plan, whether it's going down to Harrisburg or anything like that, and just coming together to fight for the fair funding, because it's if we don't get that every year, and the long-term debt we have, it's just not going to help us get out of it. It's just going to keep adding up and adding up, and it's one of the most important things I think we're facing right now.
Thank you.
So, I have two questions, I
Sure.
can roll them into one. First, what are the challenges facing our school district? And then, if you got this appointment today, would you be planning on running in
Sure.
the next election?
So besides the fair funding, one of the most recent ones is the buildings that are in disrepair. We have numerous buildings that have, asbestos, there's lead in the water, at Scranton High, there's a sprinkler issue. There's a lot of issues with our buildings that we have to ensure the safety and welfare of our children and our teachers and staff. So that's one of the biggest issues. I think another issue is, unfunded mandates. When we have things we have to do, we don't get funding for it, whether we get it for a year, we don't get it after that, or if we don't get it at all, we have to find money to make sure we are, doing what needs to be done. And I think another thing, where I was just in the recovery meeting today, I think it's we have a data issue. I think a lot of data that we were given to the recovery plan isn't correct or complete. So all the decisions that need to be made, they have to go back and, from what I took, they have to go back and run more data, and it's just delaying the process, and it's making it harder for them to implement their changes in their plan. As to your second question, about running, absolutely. I know I can make a great impact in 2 years, but, this recovery plan thing and getting back on track to where we need to be, I definitely think I want to be involved with it beyond the 2 years.
Thank you.
If faced with the decision to cut a program or special services, what data would you look to help?
Well, the first thing is how many students are affected. I would need numbers, financial numbers, why are we cutting it? How much is it gonna cost? Is there ways we can find the funding somewhere else? Can we work with is there a way we can get a grant for it? Is there a community outreach we can do it? So there's a lot of data, and that's where we go back to having correct data. If we have the correct data that we have, that we can, look into and make a sound decision that not what's the best for the overall district. So I think it's just really getting the data, seeing what the numbers are, and making a sound decision what is, overall best for the district.
Thank you, Mr. McAndrew, for your willingness and your courage for applying for this vacancy. As a lifelong resident of Scranton, as somebody who's familiar with the district, what do you believe are our strengths?
Well, first and foremost, our strengths are our students. We have students who achieve great things every day and every year. So I think that's something we definitely need to keep celebrating and keep recognizing. And also, we have some of the best teachers in the district. So helping them with their professional growth is only going to make our district stronger and make our students stronger.
Thank you.
We will be under financial recovery for the length of this term. How do you believe this will impact your service?
Impacting our services because it's more important now than ever. We need to set a sound foundation, of yes, we need to fix what happened in the past, why we're in this mess, but we also need to make adjustments and corrections to make sure and set guidelines so we make sure this doesn't happen again. Like even with the information, with the data. All right, we understand that we don't have correct data, but what are we doing going forward? Are we collecting correctly going forward? So when this happens, if there's an issue that comes up, we don't have to circle back. We're ready to go. Here's what we have. Here's the numbers. And we can go right forward and make a decision and not have to, waste any more time. Because the more time we waste, the more debt we're getting.
Now, my own question.
Okay.
We're in a somewhat unique position here. Ordinarily, the public selects the people who sit in these chairs, and we have gone several times through the process of hand-selecting people to complement this group. So what qualities, skills, experience would you bring specifically to lend to this group of people?
Okay. Well, personally, I think my education background with my graduate certificate of public budgeting and finance, which is a huge issue. Again, being on a board, I followed policy and procedure. I've, put things out for bid, approved contracts, and made, decisions what's best for the overall when I was in the park director for the parks. One thing I think that helped is I'm a team player. I think we need to be a united board. And the one thing, whether I get this position or whoever gets it, I don't want to hear, and I hate hearing, especially in the Times, and I know there's probably a reporter here, but the majority minority. Whatever decision we make as a board, we're not always going to agree. But once the decision is made, I think we all need to stand by it as a united front. And I think it's just a culture of a board where we all work together. You know, any team, any family, any business, you know, goals are more achieved when you work together, and it's just a better process.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Appreciate your time.
There we go. All right. Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Malloy?
Are there only 3 candidates there?
Yes.
Stephanie Davis didn't appear, but James Malloy is just coming.
Okay, thank you.
He didn't tell him to send you.
Good evening.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Did I just launch?
Yep, just launch. You have 2 minutes for an opening statement,
Well,
sir,
I won't dilly-dally.
and then we have some questions.
Okay, members of the board, my name is Jim Malloy. I live in the Hill section, and I am married to Lynn, and I have a son, George. George goes to Prescott School, and so did I, for that matter, slightly earlier, like the 1970s earlier. And I was just talking with Dorothy and Sean. I can tell you that it reinforced the first thing that I wanted to say to you, which is, I'm glad this isn't an election. Number one, I don't think I'd be standing here if this was an election, because an election expects that you're going to promote yourself, which I'm not very good at, and to tear your opponents down, which I have no interest in doing, because these 2 kids are great. I'm very impressed with them, and if you choose one of those 2 kids, you're gonna do just fine. And that's what's really important, is the success of this board. Can I help with the success of the board, I guess, is what you're asking yourselves and what you're gonna ask me in a few minutes. And I wanted to let you know, I do have decades of experience as a trial attorney. I've been making big money deals for decades. As a part of that deal making, you have to make difficult decisions. And not only do you have to make difficult decisions, but you have to explain the reasons for the decisions, both before the decisions are made and after the decisions are made. And I feel like that is a particular gift that I've acquired that would be beneficial to being a board member. Speaking of decisions, Lynn and I decided to have George go to public school rather than private school. One of the reasons is because we appreciate the diversity that public education offers to him as a more accurate reflection of society. And why is it important you know that about me? I don't know if you noticed, but I'm a white male of a certain seeming comfortable socioeconomic status. And if that's the only perspective that I'm bringing to this board, then I'm doing it wrong. And the fact that I'm aware of that, I think, speaks to my intention to be better than that. That's it.
Thank you very much. I am going to ask a question on behalf of Mrs. Yanni, who is on the phone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. What motivated you to come forward at this particular time to serve on the school board?
I guess the second time there was an opening, it occurred to me that someone in a position like I am to offer what I think I'm able to offer to the board would not be doing his job as a citizen of the community if he or she did not offer their services. Like I said, if this was an election, I wouldn't be standing for it. But the fact that there's an opening, of a limited amount of time to fill, that's something that I'd have a hard time looking at myself in the mirror if I knew that people were interested in me doing this and I didn't rise to the occasion.
Rob?
As you're aware, we're in, at the moment, a battle for fair funding. We are not being well paid or well serviced by the state. How do you feel that we as a board and we as a community should go about trying to rectify the shortfall in the funding we're getting from the state?
It sounds to me like that's a matter of organizing and getting volunteers together and having petitions signed and the like. I wouldn't be candid with this board if I didn't tell you that I'm not all that certain how to do this job because I don't know enough about it yet. I'm a bit of a blank slate, but I'm willing to learn how to do it, and I understand from reading certain things that there's both mandatory and elective training and so forth. And again, I'm willing to put the work in. And you know, not to get all Liam Neeson on you, but I do have a particular set of skills that I think translate very well to this position. So I know I got away from your question, Ro, but apart from organizing, getting volunteers and petitioning, I don't have any other ideas other than that. That's probably because I don't know exactly how this works.
So I have a combination of two questions. What are the challenges facing our particular school district? And the second one would be if you got this appointment or if you didn't get this appointment, would you run for election in 2 years?
I can answer those in reverse order. No. I think it's the challenges facing the board, as I understand them, from my limited perspective, are there's not enough money. And there's not enough money to do everything that this board wants to do right by the kids, and by the parents, and by the teachers, and by the unions, and by the community at large. So you got a limited amount of resources, and you have to figure out how best to make decisions about how to expend those resources. I can help with that. I have no concrete plan as I'm standing here in front of you right now, but I know that that's the problem. It's the problem in a lot of our lives, right? There's just not enough money to go around. And taking into account everybody's interests, the teachers, the kids, and the parents, it's gotta be tough. I don't envy what the board is doing, has done, and I honestly, I know it's gonna be difficult if you want me to take the vacant position.
Thank you.
If faced with the decision to cut a program or services, what data would you look to help you make that decision?
Okay. I have a feeling that since I'm one of 9, we'll all be working together on the same data that we, but I understand this is a hypothetical question, so. Ask me one more time and I'll see if I
So
can.
if you have to cut a service or a program,
Right.
what will help you make that decision?
Okay.
What factors would you?
I mean, I would read up on everything about the program that was being considered for cutting, see what was good about it, what was bad about it, what was essential about it, what was not essential about it. And the same goes for the service, you know, how important. And I guess the best way to answer that about the services is who are we affecting if we cut the service? You know, who's gonna, at some point, somebody, when there's a limited amount of money, has to get the short end of the stick. So who's getting the short end of the stick? And why is it more fair that this group should get it rather than another group should get it? She was really impressed by that.
Good evening, Mr. Malloy. Thank you for your willingness and courage for applying for this vacancy. As a resident of the city of Scranton and as a father of a district student and as a graduate of the district yourself, what do you believe are the strengths of the Scranton School District?
Well, I'm a product of it myself. So again, like I said during my opening remarks, as brief as they were, diversity stands out as one of the qualities that I value most about it. I mean, it's no, I don't think the members of this board are unaware of the fact that public education is the keystone of democracy. As a matter of fact, I think I saw that written somewhere, and I believe that to be the case. I see Mr. O'Donnell at Prescott School outside every morning, greeting every student as they come in, and greeting every parent as they drop their kid off. And that kind of personal touch and demonstration of the care and commitment that the school district employees, like Mr. O'Donnell, and the teachers that I've seen, has been consistent throughout my experience with Prescott School, both from when I was a student there and having my son there now. He's there for his 5th year. So, yeah, it's, the teachers care, the administrators care, the kids are good kids, I know they're chuckleheads some of the time. It's a good group, it's a nice peer group that my son is involved in, and all the parents that, I'm an old dad, because we didn't get started until I was like 41, 42, but all of the parents that I've met too, are just wonderful people, and it's a wonderful place to raise a child and educate a child.
Thank you.
So we will be under financial recovery for the length of this term. How do you believe that will impact your service?
Other than being cognizant of it at all times and constrained by it, I don't know. I feel like that's, again, more of a question that you might be asking somebody who is going to be making decisions solo, but I see this as like a team effort. So other than, I have a feeling that if you should choose me, and again, remember, I think it's okay if you choose me, but if you should choose me, I would be learning on the job at least for a while. So I would study every issue. I would take the mandatory educational requirements, much like they do in my profession. Like as a lawyer, you don't get to renew your license unless you take 12 continuing legal education credits a year. So I don't know if I have a strong answer for you at this point, but I'm definitely willing to do the work and learn about it.
Finally, my own question. We're in a unique situation here. Ordinarily, the public chooses the people who sit in these seats, and we have had several opportunities to hand select someone who complements this group. What qualities, skills, or experience do you bring that you think would specifically fill a need we have with this group?
Well, as I said, I feel like I'm aware of the fact that while the perspective of someone who looks like me and is in a socioeconomic position like I am, is expected to think a certain thing and is expected to act a certain way and is expected to have a certain perspective, I think I'm outside of that particular mold. I like to think that I can put myself in anybody's shoes and I can see all the issues from all sides, and that's what I've been doing professionally for 25 years. That's what I've been doing. The fact of the matter is that I read all the time. I read very fast. I comprehend very well. See, this is the part where I can promote myself, and I don't like it. I have a Notre Dame education, and I would be bringing all of that to bear, along with a willingness to work hard.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Send you back to your quarters there.
Take a vote.
You don't have a spare ballot.
Oh, yes, we have them right here.
Yes, that was at mine. Right, mark mine.
Everybody has what they need.
Wait a minute,
Tara,
lost the
text
one
me
I
my
just
iPad.
took. Well, give me one.
Do you need one?
So is it correct then that you just have the 3 candidates, right?
Yes. We have Dorothy Grill, James Malloy, and Sean McAndrew. So
I will go
at
ahead and text.
text your selection
Yeah,
to Jim.
Dorothy spoke first, Sean spoke second, and James spoke last. Because
Yes, they-
it looks.
Yes, I'm sorry,
it
that
looks
is
like-
out of
It
order.
looks like James spoke second and Sean spoke first.
So,
because-
yes, to clarify that, it was Dorothy, then Sean, then James. Thank you. Just in the order of speaking.
Motion class.
Sorry.
Yes, we sign, we do sign. Everybody sign?
We all sign.
I think that's what we done last time. This is very, very hard.
I gave it to you.
This is
Because I trusted him.
Wow, she's
Very,
I
very.
said, this was something called three very, very messy candidates.
Okay.
There happen to be 3 seats right there, isn't that convenient?
Absolutely, right?
Well, I have to say to all 3 of you, we have just spent these few minutes talking about how we could choose any one of you. This was absolutely a delight this evening. You all came beautifully prepared with wonderful answers, and I hope everyone in the audience enjoyed this conversation as much as we did. And whether it's appropriate or not, I hope those of you who aren't selected this evening will consider running. This is a very hopeful moment for the Scranton School District. With that being said, we do have Mr. Malloy with 5 votes, and may I have a motion to appoint him to the board?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second that. Mrs. Orr, roll call?
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mrs. Welby?
Yes.
Mrs. Yanni?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
8 affirmative.
Paperwork for you to sign, and our solicitor will. Yes. Is it always this exciting when you stand in?
She's probably going to read.
Yeah, I'll be reading.
Okay.
Just because I know this from last month, they throw this all at you right now. You'll be sworn in and then you'll sit down and you'll get started. I did it
your right hand.
I, James Malloy,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
or affirm
or affirm
that I will support,
that I will support,
obey, and defend the Constitution
obey, and defend the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office
and I will discharge the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Thank you.
Dorothy, thank you very much. Congratulations, sir.
Should I go around?
Make your rounds. Thank you. If I may have a motion to adjourn the vacancy meeting, we will take a brief break and go into the work session.
I'm gonna
Move. Second?
Yes.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Less than 5 minutes. Work session to order. I assume we don't need, do we need to do another roll call?
Yeah, just for the
Okay.
record, with our new coordinator.
Oh, yes. I forgot about him already. Welcome.
Ms. Cruz,
Present.
Mrs. Dixon,
Present.
Ms. Fox,
Present.
Mr. Malloy,
Present.
Ms. Hume,
present.
Mr. Schuster,
Present.
Mrs. Welby,
Present.
Mrs. Janey,
Present.
Ms. Martin,
Present.
9 present.
How about that? Okay, we have several presentations and discussions this evening. First, Bill Rissy from, is it Connects? Connects, okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your time, and having just sat through a very unusual special session, I have to say that you guys conducted that process with a lot of class. And I also think it's, as somebody who's, I don't live in the Scranton School District, so as somebody who is reasonably disinterested in what happens here, and I say that in jest, I want to say thanks to you people for doing what you're doing as volunteers. I sit on a different volunteer board, and I know that you must think you're crazy for undertaking this. With that, my firm helps to arrange alternative telecommunications services in multiple state areas. The firm was originally organized in Salt Lake City. Main office is in Western Maryland, and we have a branch office in the Chamber of Commerce building in the Jessup office park. And we have been asked to build a diverse path backup connection for Geisinger Call Center. And the way that we have engineered it would be to connect from hopefully one of the Scranton School District buildings here into microwave the connection up to the Montage Mountain area. To do that, we would simply place a small antenna on the roof, plug into your electricity, and other than that, you would virtually never know that we're there. We have options where we could do it with a private business, we could do it with a different school district, that also faces Montage Mountain. But when I discussed our need to do this with Tom Welby from Marty Flynn's office, he said, hey, why don't you call Rob DeLuca, see what he thinks over at West. He encouraged me to say, no, give me the proposal. And so we've been trying to work this through the administration and get it from the board. So that's the reason for me to be here. We would propose to make an annual donation to a student fund or to whatever good cause the school district has in mind. We are looking for a single rooftop with a single building, but I would see this as a pilot project where, if all goes well, we would come back and talk to you about additional rooftops and additional businesses or homes that need service. I know you got a lot of things to get through tonight. One of my problems is keeping things short, so I'll stop and see what questions I have generated.
Any questions?
When it comes to this type of antenna, I mean, I don't know how you measure output and anything like that, but how does this compare to a cell tower or something like that?
So on West Scranton, you already have a cell tower array, and this would be a fraction of the energy. This is not a broad dispersion of radio signal, which is what cell towers do, because you're moving around throughout the community using your cell phone. Instead, this is called a point-to-point or a fixed wireless connection. So our effective radiated tower is a couple of watts compared to cell towers. It's also very tightly focused. It's a 2 or 3 degree beam that literally goes from concave antenna to concave antenna. We've done this exact type of arrangement with a number of educational institutions in the area, University of Scranton, Johnson College, Luzerne Community College, WVIA, Scranton Cultural Center, Lakeland High School. It's a pretty normal and benign request.
Your cover letter alludes to minimal electricity, that is at the district's expense?
You know, what I would propose is that we either agree on on an amperage. We think we'll probably take 5 amps, maybe 10. So we could either agree upon that and then just also reimburse you for the electricity, or we could actually measure it when we're done and then, multiply it out so that, we don't want to take advantage of the school district. So I talked to our engineer actually as I was driving down today, and he said, look, why don't we ask for a 20 amp circuit, which is way more than we'll use, and we could just calculate what that would, what that cost would be, and we'll just stipulate to that. And we can revisit that annually with your facilities team, just in case they think that number should be adjusted. But, what we're trying to do is we're trying to avoid going through the expense and the aggravation of having to put a completely new service into your building. Just trying to keep it simple. So, but our draw on energy is minimal.
With this type of antenna, do you know if we have to go in through any zoning?
No.
So it falls under
Yeah.
a certain size?
And it would be placed back away from the roof so that nobody would see it. Nobody would know it's there. And in my letter,
I saw a picture of what it looked like.
that is in Boston. That's an installation we did in Boston. Very typical of what we would do. It doesn't hurt the roof, and if it needs to be moved, in case the roof needs to be repaired or something happens, it can be done instantaneously.
You also mentioned that it could prove to be a technology resource in the future. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Our company does network design and implementation in a multi-state area for educational institutions and for utilities and for county governments, including Lackawanna County government. To the extent that we could ever provide any assistance or advice or collaborate with the school district's technology office, we have a local team here, and we collaborate, we try to help. So we would be a resource that you could call upon for advice or expertise or help. Our team, we've got one guy who's used to be the resource officer, police officer at Valley View, who's our lead field tech. Another guy who's a Navy vet who lives in Wilkes-Barre. A guy that just graduated from Lackawanna, or from Johnson College. So we're all here. So there's 4 of us here, and then the rest of our team comes in and out all the time.
Can you just speak up if you have?
Yeah, go-
I was
go
gonna,
for
I
it.
was gonna remain silent for the first, at least the first 10 minutes, but I wouldn't be doing my profession any honor if I didn't mention something at this point about releases and waivers of liability and so
Right.
forth. Is that something, should that be required?
We have a call it contract that that we used and modified with the other educational institutions, which includes all of those releases. And we would also provide our certificate of insurance, you know, to meet the district's demand. I don't think that would be a problem, but I didn't want to type up a big, long document for fear that a lawyer on the board would want to read it.
Seems like a legitimate concern.
Yeah. But, you know, we would make it as either as simple or as complicated as you want to. And I will tell you, the first one we did in the area was with Luzerne Community College. Wow. Probably 20 pages of document. But it seems, you know, we've also found people who are a little bit more passionate. But anything that we constructed, if someone were to find a flaw or a concern later, you know, we would amend it. We're not here to take advantage of anybody.
Okay, thank you.
If you're agreeable, do I follow up with anybody?
I was just gonna say that, if we have consensus that we would like to consider this, would you speak to Mr. Doherty, I'm assuming? Would that be the appropriate?
Yes, well,
Yes.
you would have to have a vote on.
Oh,
that
yes,
after
yes, but I mean,
this
this,
meeting, and
you
then we would
could
move forward.
discuss this, bring a proposal, a more formal
Yes.
proposal, and we could put it on for
On the-
resolution.
Correct.
If you give us permission to schedule a visit to the school, we could actually take some pictures and give you a more complete proposal. Could we do that between now and your next meeting? Is that?
Is that,
I had stipulated that not to have access to the school until after it was presented to you,
Yeah.
obviously.
Which is reasonable.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm comfortable moving, is everyone comfortable moving to that?
And
Point.
we can,
No, not at this point, it's just consensus, and then it will come as a resolution. And we'll have more information in our packets.
I'll get a certificate of insurance sent to the school district before we arrange that. Just,
We just ask any and all information that you have, we have it by Friday at noon,
okay,
if that's possible, so that
Absolutely.
we can send it home in the board packet.
right. And all of our guys have passed all the clearances to work in schools, so just so you're.
Perfect, that was my next question. Do
Yeah.
they have clearances?
Will the vote include where the 1,000 annually would definitely go? And his proposal, so, you know what I mean?
I think we'd look to the administration for a recommendation on that.
Can you repeat that, Kathy?
In his proposal, it says that we propose to partner with one of the student groups or just school activity funds to secure rooftop permission and donate $1,000 annually in exchange for access. So just confirming if that'll be confirmed for when we vote where that.
I would suggest that the money would go to the business office, and then we would disperse how the board would like us to do that.
And is that okay with
Yes.
your?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
I can say that to all of us.
Thank you very much. Next, we have an update on the 21st Century Grant.
Good evening, members of the board, administration, and community members. I have a very exciting update on the 21st Century Grant. This grant was secured through the NEIU. It is a grant for 5 years and is being conducted currently at all of the elementary schools. It is STEM-based for grades 4 and 5 only. Classes from all of the elementary schools are also provided opportunities to visit the STEM Center at the Northeast Intermediate Unit, and all of the transportation is also provided. It is a year-long program, and it is very, very rigorous. The goal is 4 days a week to offer this program for 3 hours a day, and it is being run by our Scranton School District teachers, and all of the funding is directly related to the 21st Century Grant, so the teachers are paid through the funding from the grant. The Department of Ed has been making some unannounced site visits to our elementary schools. They did so several weeks ago and again last week. Some schools were up and running, others were not. By the end of January, early February, all elementary schools will be up and running. Some will be running in certain capacity depending on the amount of teachers that they were able to get to run the program. Some schools have a lot of teachers, other schools don't have as many. So something is better than nothing, so some schools are running it on limited days versus the Monday through Thursday. The feedback we've been receiving from the principals are that the students love it, the teachers are enjoying it, and some schools have increased and even doubled their enrollment. The STEM-based is all tied to data and math skills. It is providing students exposure to coding. We changed a little something in the grant. Transportation was provided after tutoring home for the students, but because some of our kiddos are latchkey students, we really were a little worried about them going home to an empty home and then deciding to leave and go visit family members, so it's a parent pickup only. That was something that we thought was in the best benefit for the safety of our students, that parents come to the school to pick their students up. And we're hoping that we'll have some successful results as a result of this program. As I said, we just began the program January. The other schools are starting it in February, and we're off to a really great start. So I just wanted to make you aware that this is happening in our 4th and 5th grade schools, and we're very excited about it. Does anybody have any questions?
I have some just interest questions. The students choose to sign up for this, or they recommend it?
A combination, yes. Principal recommendation, teacher recommendation, but the parents have to sign a permission slip.
What type of activities?
Well, they're STEM-based, so there's science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Of course, the teachers prepare lesson plans, so there's a planning period built in, and it's based on the data where the school has identified there are weaknesses. However, instead of just weaknesses, we are also trying to challenge children with technology and coding and science-based experiments. So it's a combination of lessons that are not only math-based, but science and technology-based as well.
And are there benchmarks to meet, or how are you collecting data? How are you going to be able to measure if this is impacting test scores?
Depending on what the baseline data schools use, typically it was either state assessments, so it would be their PSSA scores. It's also, teachers took into consideration test scores, recent test scores based on the math curriculum, and what we're looking for to shoot for as far as enabling students and preparing them for the 21st century. So based on all of those factors, students were given baseline assessments, and then through the lessons and the interventions provided, they will have a post-test to see if learning has actually occurred. There has to be a pre and post-test to make sure that this is a valid program.
How is the program being advertised? Is like a flyer being sent to all the students, or is it based on students' aptitude for success?
It's actually targeting the underachieving students, actually, the focus is on those students. But it depended on whoever the principal and the teachers in collaboration felt would enjoy this program. The letters were sent out to all 4th and 5th grade families. There really wasn't a specific criteria, except they needed to limit the numbers, because there were only certain numbers of children per teacher. So there was some selection, thought that went into it, but it was provided to as many students as possible. And then schools with higher numbers of teachers obviously were able to accept more students. So those students that wanted to participate have been able to. There is also a substitute list, so should we have teachers that need to miss, there are substitutes also on backup if we need those people.
What is the enrollment?
Currently, I don't have a full total. I will get that for you. I will find out from the principals, but I do know that some schools are doubling their enrollment as we speak. Some buildings have 20 to 30 students enrolled, others are a little less, but I'll get that total for you. I'll get the total for the board.
And the drug and alcohol prevention, that's a requirement with the?
That's not a part of this.
Okay. Oh, that's the other one. Okay. All right, we're good. I was confused. It's okay.
There's a lot. I will get the board the total of enrollment. Any other questions? Thank you.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great.
Thank you.
It's great that we're giving the kids that chance.
We have an AP Psychology and AP Spanish update.
Yeah, here's some great news.
You're trying to throw us off the track, aren't you?
It's all good. It's sunny and 80 every day.
That's right.
As part of the recovery plan, one of the mandates was to have more college prep readiness, more opportunities. So we are adding both AP Psychology and AP Spanish to both of our high schools. That takes our offering of honors and AP classes up to 30 courses. I think there's 12 APs and 18 honors courses. We picked AP Psychology and AP Spanish when I spoke to the building of the principals, Mr. DeLuca, Mr. Coyle, they met with their staff, and this is what seemed to generate the most interest. So, we're very proud to be adding those two AP courses to the, what's going to be available to students for next year.
Good news?
Good
Thank
news. Good news.
I have a question really quick in regards to the AP classes. My sister, who is currently in the high school and is signing up for many AP classes, is yelling at me about taking the exams or such. I don't know, I took one AP class in my lifetime, so I'm not sure how it works. Is it promoted to them to take the exam, or is it a matter of class it is?
It is, but there's a cost.
Yes.
It's not cheap, and sometimes that becomes an obstacle.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of students, there's so many dual enrollment opportunities within our schools that a lot of students will just choose to take the dual enrollment instead of taking the AP course, because if you get an 85 in the course, you're getting the credits, regardless of how you do on that AP test. Now, certainly we encourage, and the buildings encourage their kids to take the AP test, because, that's good for us. And that, one of the things Dr. Fine and I talk about in Missy, with the recovery plan, is we want to encourage kids to take that AP exam.
She just shuts me down, so that's why I was curious.
Really it becomes, am I paying the $75 to take the AP test, or am I paying the $300 to Lackawanna, and I'm getting 3 college credits that are going to transfer? That's ultimately what it boils down to. And I think that once we get ourselves into a stronger financial position, maybe it's not a bad opportunity to look for some funding sources within ourselves, or maybe in some partnerships to pay for some of those AP courses. Now, students can get waivers if they qualify. Not everybody does.
Do they still do any fundraising or whatnot? I thought when I was in science.
Some of the schools did. That wasn't done globally, but I think that still happens on an individual course basis, yes.
The goal of this administration is to make sure that we take care of our kids and pay for the AP courses, so we need to get back, we need to do that.
Like, we roughed it out, it was about $25,000 if we were to pay for everybody's AP courses.
It is a benchmark though, and a quality measure, if we're to see that the instruction is on par with what the test is. So if we're not having
Correct.
students take that test, then we don't know
Agree.
if we're teaching the course
Absolutely.
correctly. So I, too, when I was reading the recovery plan, I would really like to see that implemented, but I do understand the financial, and it's $90 now to take the AP exam. My girls love to collect AP exams. So, as many as you can sign up for. So there is that financial deterrent, but then we're not testing our instruction.
Exactly.
So
Right,
we
that's
really,
right.
and I think too, looking at the percent that you take the AP exam, it's very low. And if I was looking to move into an area, I would want to know that students generally take the AP exam. The problem with the AP exam, if you're not familiar, if you don't score generally 4s and 5s, AP Latin is a 3 because it's a difficult test, but usually it's 4s and 5s. If you don't score that on your AP exam, you don't get college credits. But if we're not taking the exam in a good percentage, we're not measuring the teaching that's going on.
Correct, and that's the problem that we have right now. So we want to be able to avoid that obstacle and tell the kids that we need to find the funding
We need to
so that they
find
take
funding.
the test.
Absolutely.
Correct.
And do we have teachers in place now that can teach AP Psych?
We're going through that process now.
Some school districts have a reward system. Students pay for the test, and then if they get a 4 or a 5, the school district reimburses them for that test. It's an encouragement, for students, and I think if they get a 3, they get half of the money back or something, but that's something that I'd like to see us at least pursue in the near future, because it really doesn't make a lot of sense to offer AP courses if students aren't taking the test.
No, and even when, as teaching freshmen in college, many students will say they've taken an AP course, but I kind of don't count it unless, and not count it for credit, but don't even count it in my mind unless you're taking the test.
Right.
So are you saying that students are taking AP courses in order to challenge themselves, but they're not taking the test because they're afraid of failure and because of the high cost?
I think there's different reasons. I think, like Paul said, we're losing kids to AP because of the dual enrollment, number one. Number two, the kids that are taking AP courses that can't afford the AP test aren't sitting for the test. So they're completing the course in class, but they're not taking the test. That's a very big obstacle in our, obviously, our economically disadvantaged kids are not sitting correct. So we need to find a way to fund the kids to take the test so that's not an obstacle.
I mean, like getting scholarships or grants, or?
We need to find the money, yes.
Although if you meet a certain level, there is a waiver that the school district can get for students to take the test. So it depends on their income level.
And I think we need to do a better job as the school district encouraging those students to follow through with that and sitting for the test. So there's a lot of factors here that I think are playing on why our numbers are decreasing with kids taking the test.
And when you talk about $25,000, would that take care of everybody, or does that take the waivers into account?
No, that's if we pay for everyone.
If you pay for it.
Like I just took the enrollment in our APs from last school year, and, I gave a rough number.
But offering more is definitely an advantage, and that's one thing I would look at if I was trying to move into a district, how many AP courses does the school offer? So that's
Yes.
fantastic.
We're gonna keep building.
All right,
Now,
next one.
2020, 2021, high school German and Latin.
We can't find staff.
Oh, it breaks my heart. I have a junior in college who's a Latin major, so hang on. It breaks my heart.
The German position has been posted for the better part of 2 school years, am I correct?
Correct.
We're just not getting any applicants.
No.
Latin, at this point, the only Latin offering there is at Scranton High. We have one Latin teacher stationed out of West Scranton. There's only one Latin offering at Scranton High, it's Latin 2, because there were kids that took Latin 1 last year, but it's offered at 7:30 in the morning. So that teacher goes over there in the morning and then leaves and goes over to West. And there's currently 5 kids enrolled in that course. German 1 is run at West High as a distance learning. So the teacher is at Scranton remotely, so the kids at West are sitting in a room watching a screen. Now there's obviously a teacher and they're supervising them, but the instruction's coming through the screen. That started with about 40 kids at the start of the year, and now they're down to 17 kids in 2 sections. There is no German 2, 3, or 4 there. We've been looking for teachers and Johnny can speak more of that, but for years, we're just not getting applicants. And the distance learning is just not working. It's not keeping kids engaged. And with only Latin 2 currently being offered at Scranton High, there was not a Latin 1 option because we couldn't staff it. Like right now, kids are scheduling in the high schools, they're going through that process. They're not even requesting those courses at this point.
We can't run a class, with 5 kids in it. Number one, number two, it's in the recovery plan. I mean, that's just financially not a good idea for us.
If we're eliminating these languages because of the lack of staff, and that's been an issue for years in Scranton, rather than not offering at all, did we entertain the idea of doing it through like a cyber program?
We did, and it was not successful. The kids were not successful at all. That was last year's debacle.
Okay.
So we did the Apex, our
remember that.
cyber program. Everybody was out by the end of the first quarter.
Okay.
It's just, a teacher not in front of them was not happy.
So sad.
For a language.
Now, I'm just saying what I know, and I don't know if this is an option, but the University of Scranton has several Fulbright scholars, and what their task is to teach foreign languages. So in the past, my daughter's had a Fulbright scholar that taught her German, and she right now has a Fulbright scholar that teaches her Italian. She's a lots of different languages major, but like a partnership with them and their Fulbright scholars, would that be an option to open
I'm
this
open
up?
to anything. I'm open to anything. It's just, what's happened is we've had such staffing issues.
That's the certifications.
Oh, they're not
I
certified.
mean, if they're not certified, it would be okay if we had a teacher and they came in, but we
That
need
was gonna be my question.
We need a certification.
I don't want to get off the subject here, and I did not get back to read it closely, but did anybody else see the article that came through the PSBA newsletter today about volunteers? Did Did you see that? I'll have to, that just reminded me, I'll have to make sure you see that. I don't know that that's a viable option for anything, but it seemed to speak to that certification issue, but might be a good opportunity for people who have those skills, but don't have the certificate. Oh, well,
Now, they're only here for a school year, as the Fulbright program works, they're only here for a school year, so it would be constantly new, it would be nothing permanent, so.
Have we contacted the Goethe Institute?
I'm sorry?
Have we contacted the Goethe Institute?
I don't know the answer to that.
The Goethe Institute, I mean, the Alliance Française is the French version of it. The Goethe Institute is much more Germanic and serious. But basically, they fund, through their government, programs in various parts of the world which are designed to focus language and culture. And there may be a way, and it may be worth trying to see, because I know they do fund language teaching and language training. It's many, many years since I had my last cocktail party with the very severe representative from the Goethe Institute. Okay. But it might be worth following up, because the Alliance Française, I know, will provide supplemental materials and people and contests and input for French language. And I'm pretty sure the Goethe Institute does the same for German. Not many dead Romans around, so we can't do it for Latin, but we could look at doing that. What do you think?
Here's our only issue, just so everybody's aware. We are currently scheduling right now, because we have pushed all timelines up. So it is not on, the reason why we're bringing this to you is because it's not on our course selection sheet right now. So I can't, for next year, although I would love to say, I'm not going to say to you that it's going to be, because students are scheduling, they're probably almost done filling out their course selection sheets.
Pretty close.
So for the future, absolutely,
Yeah, no, I wasn't
but
thinking
for
for next year, but it may be
2021,
worth,
it won't happen.
it may be worth just following up.
Right.
You want me to follow it up?
Yeah, the issue actually goes back to certification, because I went through this. I offered, in my district, I offered Japanese, and I mean, I had people who were native speakers, I had people, but I couldn't get them certified in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has a very strict certification requirement, so we can certainly try that. We certainly can investigate, but it really comes down to certification in Pennsylvania. They're very strict. And they really, we had to drop Chinese, we had to drop Japanese, because I couldn't get them certified. And they had master's degrees, one had a doctorate, but it's very difficult. So
They're even difficult on reciprocal certification.
they are. So just so you know, it's great, and we might be able to bring them in for a month or something, but not to teach the class.
Okay.
Okay.
To get credit.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Laffey,
I'm up.
2018 audit discussion.
Certainly. In front of you guys, in front of everyone, is just a brief kind of high-level presentation or summary of the 2018 audit results. Our financial statements are rather large. I think they're around 75 pages long. That includes all the funds of the school district. What we did here was focus on the general fund. So on page 2, you'll notice that the 2018 general fund budget was adopted with the total expenditures of $161,863,185. That budget consisted of revenues of local, state, and federal sources of $152,403,369. The utilization of a sinking fund credit that was located in our debt service fund, a separate fund from the general fund, of just shy of $2 million. And as you are aware, we had to borrow that year to cover our expenditures and to continue to operate, which was just over $4,162,000. So in total, the revenues and other sources of financing were $158,563,185. Again, with total expenditures of $161,863,185. That leaves us with excess expenditures of $3.3 million. If you recall, the district utilized or the healthcare trust restricted fund balance to, balance that budget. But that is utilization of a fund balance. So we started the year off in the hole 3.3, okay? On the next page, I give.
So the healthcare trust fund, that originally came from a borrowing that was done prior, correct?
Correct, yep.
We put $5 million into the.
It was around 6, yes. Yeah, and that's gonna be covered a little bit as we move forward into our fund balances. I'm gonna give a brief explanation of the fund balances. On the next page, it's a short explanation of how the accounting for the debt service fund transfer and the debt borrowing is handled. The expenditures related to debt service are budgeted for in the general fund. The borrowing and the fund balance for the debt service fund, when it comes in, the proceeds go to the debt service fund, not the general fund, and the expenditures are recognized on the debt service fund. So what you're seeing in the audit is a large variance of us coming well under budget in our debt service expenditures. So what we've done on the next page is kind of, adjusted those expenditures to kind of true it up to reflect it. So your budgeted expenditures of $161,863, we reduced for the debt service borrowing and also for the debt fund transfer, which we have an adjusted general fund expenditures of $155,703,000. Again, on revenues of $152,403, or $3.3 million excess expenditures over revenues. Okay, that was again fund balance. That's cash that we use to operate throughout the year. Okay. The next page shows our budget versus our adjusted budget versus our actual. Our revenues performed just over $1.2 million better than budget. The expenditures were $3.2 million better than budget, but we had other financing uses. The auditors make a reclassification for various items. Some of them are special ed lawsuits, extraordinary items, special ed lawsuits, workers' comp fund transfers, student activity fund transfers. All that are budgeted in your expenditures, they reclassify them down below the line because they are transfers out of the general fund into another fund within the financial statements. But they are included here. Overall, when you add up the positive variances and the other financing sources, the district performed $2,408,000 better than budget. So our total fund balance was a deficit of $891,398, not the proposed budget of $3.3 million deficit. The next page talks about some of those fund balances. We started the 2018 year with our audited 2017 financial statements, which were fund balances consisting of the restricted for debt service, the restricted for healthcare, and our negative unassigned balance for a total of a positive $422,000. In 2018, as we discussed, we utilized the healthcare trust, so that has gone down to zero. And the restricted for debt service fund balance consists of the unfunded debt borrowing that the district had undertaken in 2015. That money was restricted for the future principal and interest payments on that bond issue. So when those payments are made on that specific issue, it reduces that fund balance. So overall, you'll see that the total change of all the fund balances was a deficit of $891,000, which would then give our total fund balance change from a positive $422,000 to a negative $468,711. The next page kind of explains the sources or the origin of those fund balances. As I stated, the restricted for debt service, that was related to the borrowing that happened in 2015, as well as the borrowing that occurred that same year to establish the healthcare trust fund. And then the unassigned fund balance, this represents the total surpluses and deficits that the district has accumulated over its history. Currently, we have more liabilities than the district has assets. The 12/31/18 budgeted unassigned is a negative $22,705,000. To put it into perspective, PDE limits the amount of the unassigned fund balance that a district can carry. For a district of our size or over $19 million, that's 8%. So on approximately $161 million budget, we have the ability to have roughly a $13 million positive fund balance. The next area here is just a comparison of our revenues from a high level, local, state, and federal. Again, as noted, the revenues came in at $1,235,071, better than budget. This can be kind of attributed to two non-reoccurring and unbudgeted items. We received an $805,000 health insurance audit refund that was coded to our local sources. And we also applied for and received a $553,000 hurricane aid reimbursement, and that is located in your state sources. Okay, so those are obviously non-budgeted, non-recurring items that helped us achieve that $1.2 million positive result of actual versus budget. It's important to note also that in that year, the 2018 budget, we received a $2 million empowerment fund from the state of Pennsylvania, from PDE, but that was a budgeted item. The next page details your expenditures, your budget versus actual, and it's broken out by objects, from your salaries, your benefits, your purchase of services, supplies, property, and debt service. As covered in the beginning, our actual results were $1,173,531, a positive budget to actual result. And that's mainly, on the next page, I kind of break it down and kind of show where they're coming from. We had a positive result where salaries were under budget. We feel that was primarily due to some vacant positions that remained budgeted for that just weren't filled that year. The employee benefits, the 200 functions, which consist of your health care, your FICA Medicare taxes, PSERS, unemployment, and workers' comp, was $1.2 million lower than budget. It was PSERS and the unemployment came in under budget, and they're offset a little bit by higher healthcare costs. We kind of missed the mark on the other purchase services where we were 1.1 higher in the 500 objects, which consists of your charter, your transportation, and some other purchase services, but those are the two largest items in that 500 series. Our debt service was $656,000 under budget, and there's the additional other expenditure savings of around $131,000 I didn't drill in or identify. But in total, expenditures were $1,173,000 under our budgeted amount. Positives was that overall we performed $2.4 million better than anticipated. The negatives, again, the district had to rely on one-time revenue sources as well as a borrowing, and overall our fund balance decreased by $891,000.
When we're looking at those higher transportation costs, and I don't mean to come off topic here, do we know how much was spent on the transponder and some of that we were?
The transponder?
To make our transportation department more efficient?
I could find that out for you. Off the top of my head, I'm going to guess that we bid it was probably in the $40,000 to $50,000 range for the software, I believe, but I can have that information for your board packet.
What attributed to the increased transportation cost?
I think that there was a goal set to reduce some of the number of buses that possibly we didn't achieve it in that year, but we have an analysis of what our prior year versus actual was compared to where we budgeted at, and we can provide that as well. Any other questions?
Pat, I have two other questions that aren't really on this agenda, if you don't mind, but I think this is a good segue. In our packets, you provided some information about the Act 511 tax limit. Could you just touch on that a little bit, please?
Certainly. The document that you had in your packet was it was your local education agency tax data sheet that's located in the PDE's 2028 budget form. As part of the budget submission process, we need to input all of our millages, all of our levies, and our estimated budgeted revenues from that. This system does a few things. It checks to make sure that you're not raising any taxes above the actual index that if you're not approved for. They also offer the sheet that I sent you home where it sets the limit on what we're allowed to levy for Act 511 taxes. And that is a 12 mils based off of your STEB market value. Your STEB is your state tax equalization board market value. So the Act 511 limit for the school district is $27,443,741. And in the 2020 budget that was just recently adopted, we levied a total of $19,330,000 of Act 511 taxes.
So this form would indicate that we are taxing appropriately.
Correct.
And you also provided the audit from or the financial statements rather, from the single tax office, and did say that someone could come and go through this.
If you would like, I can schedule them to come to our
I
next
think that would be
meeting. Okay.
Yeah.
Would you like them here for the next Monday, or the?
Perhaps.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if that's possible, that would be great.
Certainly.
Is that everyone happy with that? Very good, because there is a good, on page 8 of this, I think there's a good explanation of what responsibilities fall under the single tax office, and I do think that's a conversation we need to keep having, make sure everybody understands how all of this works, and especially as it pertains to delinquencies. I know that's something we want to keep pursuing, and we have scheduled a meeting, the president of City Council, myself, Missy, the mayor, some representatives from the administration, to talk about the changes the city is trying to implement in terms of delinquent tax collection, and learn what it is we can be doing to support those efforts, and any sort of shared endeavor we can all get behind. So,
I'll see if they're available.
thank you. We have the Bancroft basement oil tank.
Currently, the basement Bancroft oil tank room, those of you that were on the building committee, you remember we went and did a tour. Some of you were there. When we walked into that back room that is now used for storage at Bancroft, and people suggested, there's mold on the ceiling, there's mold on the walls. So we went ahead and had some air quality testing done. And you know what, I should have done this earlier. We have associates from Guzik Associates here, some representative. Joe Guzik is here, Chris Notary here, and Brent Tripp is here. So as we move down, if you have any technical questions, I'm sure they could answer your questions. The results that came out of that in the oil tank room is actually the spore count in there is actually lower than the spore count outside. However, there's one that was slightly higher, and I'm going to show my ignorance here. I'm going to say it's penicillium. That was slightly higher. So in an effort to be proactive, and we just decided, I made a decision we're going to remediate it. So we went out and we solicited free bids. So basically what they're doing is they're getting rid of the water damaged boxes that have been in there. It's not the walls, it's not the ceiling, it's the material that's just been sitting. So that's currently going on.
So we have 3 bids, so we will be moving forward with that, with the 3 bids.
Correct.
Okay, did you provide them with the 3 bids?
I did not, because we just got we got one today, and then actually, we went to 3. One, the one that was lowest was damage control. I won't mention the name of the other 2, I'll provide that to you. But one came in today, and the other one decided not to bid.
Okay. And what are we looking at cost-wise?
$4,900. $49,6704.
So this is gonna be removal of the boxes and then a cleaning of the room?
Yes. And there were some very, very old documents in there that we don't need to keep anymore. So they're also gonna shred those documents and provide receipts of what exactly was shredded, so there's actually, it's not so much actually cleaning out as what they're gonna do with it, that's actually providing some of the costs, because we have to make sure that we do that all correctly.
So part of the shredding is part of the cost?
Yes.
How big is the room in comparison to, say, this room?
It's about the size of this room.
And we feel confident that disposing of these documents in this way is appropriate. There's nothing that somebody's gonna go looking for some day in the future. We're okay with what's in
I
there?
am very confident now.
When we were there, Paul, we also were talking about an odor that was coming up, they were going to cap that off. Did that get
It's
capped?
funny you're asking. Yes, we have a temporary fix in there. It's funny you're asking that because I just had a meeting 2 days ago about that sewer line and the sewer smell that keeps kind of happening at Bancroft. Well, it turns out the building's operating exactly like it was designed however many years ago. The actual sewer lines for the city are above the lower level of the school. So water empties into this holding tank, and then it has to get pumped up out of the holding tank to the sewer line. Now, they're never gonna take out all of the water that's in there. And what happens is when they don't flush, when our own maintenance staff doesn't flush enough water through there consistently, now you have stagnant water there. So people are saying, it's sewage. It's not sewage. It's just stagnant water that's been building up in there
And that area down there is one of the first in the city that floods.
all the time.
Oh, yeah. But we were talking about capping off that open.
Yes.
And we did cap it?
Yes, right now that's capped and sealed, and they're making a permanent plate. They're engineering a permanent plate. That's probably about a week or so out.
That doesn't affect the ventilation or
No.
flow of it anyway?
No, I mean, it's gonna be bolted down, so if we ever had to take it off to just, replace the pump or something, we can do that. But no.
So just to be clear, with regards to that room, Paul will provide you with the 2 bids that we have. We did not get a third one. We're gonna move forward and we're gonna get that done, okay?
Scranton High School sprinkler system discussion. It's your
Here I
night,
am
Mr.
again.
Doherty.
Here I am again. I've talked about this every single time I was still in front of you. At this point, I need some direction. Where do you want me to go with this? As you know, I'll just give a brief summary for our new board members. We have spent now, what was our last emergency fix, do you know? We just did one.
14,000.
14,000. So we're up to about $52,000 in emergency fixes to the sprinkler system. Replacing the whole thing would be 2 to 2.5 million. We have, the company that comes in and does the emergency fixes, they said they can't provide us a cost to fix the whole thing, because every time they fix a section, somewhere further down the line, they find another problem. They said, we'd be willing to give you a contract of not to exceed $250,000, and we could do as much as we can within that span. That doesn't really sit real well with me. If we want to look at this and get a clear picture, we're going to have to engage an engineer that specializes in this kind of thing to do a study, give us the specs so we could solicit bids for it. That will be very expensive. I guess I just need direction on which way you want to go.
Can we seek proposals from engineering firms that do specialize in this?
Sure we can. Absolutely, we should.
At this point in time, that's what I'm recommending
Yeah.
to the board, that we find an engineer that specializes in this, and and they give us a bid, they spec it out, and we move forward. Because we've been talking about this for way too long now, so we gotta move forward.
The last time we spoke, we were talking about doing these emergency fixes to get to the summer to get to this point.
Correct.
And we're gonna move to this point now.
Certainly I'm not a sprinkler system expert, but having an engineer come in and do a study on this, that's not gonna be quick.
That's the problem, right?
Every section that we're fixing it and it's completely fixed, and we're not gonna be coming back to this.
Well, the sections we're fixing are completely fixed.
Okay.
But so if there's a leak here, as soon as they fix this, well, the part that's a little bit further down, that wasn't leaking because this was the bigger leak, now that's starting to leak. Like our last emergency fix, was in the gym, and how high was that?
Started with 1, then we wound up doing 4. We were almost 60 feet up to the ceiling in the gym, in the main gym at Scranton High School.
And that was part of the reason why it was so expensive, because they needed to bring in the equipment.
And
We had
Right.
to bring a special
Go up
lift to
to-
get it through the gym to get up to the ceiling. We don't own equipment that goes that high, obviously, so.
Do you have any kind of idea how many companies in the area do this type of work?
Engineering work? I don't. I mean, I know of one, but that doesn't mean there's not others.
There's not many in our area that do that kind of engineering. It's specialty plumbing work, and it's heavily regulated, a lot of codes, and special design procedures. So there's plumbing engineers that do the sanitary lines and toilets and sinks and drains and all the rest of that, but sprinklers is a real subspecialty. I think if you find maybe one in our area, that's great, but most of them are gonna be down in Philadelphia.
So what is our best process here? This doesn't sound like this step of it would necessarily be a bid situation, but proposals, what are we looking for?
We need somebody to spec it out, so we have to find the appropriate person. So we're gonna have to do some research. I mean, I tell you all the time.
You're a math
I went
teacher.
to school
I know.
to teach math, not to do sprinkler
Right.
systems, so somehow I'm talking about things that are all new.
And she's more
So-
advanced. I taught 5th grade.
So, these are the, with the direction of the board, we would like to move forward. We need to find the appropriate people. We need to reach out. Paul can reach out and talk to. Maybe Guzik can help us, lead us in the right direction. Doctor had mentioned that she knew, so we need somebody
So
to
we
come
can
and
get some
spec it.
options
You
and
got it.
move forward on it.
Yes, so we will come to you with options. We just needed you to say, move forward.
But we're gonna
And-
put a proposal out and try to solicit some of these.
We need the engineer to do the specs.
Right.
And that's what, we have to find that appropriate engineer who's gonna do the specs. And then we would take those specs and we would put them out to bid, correct?
I'll work with Paul to check out the qualifications on the engineer that would probably be the best one for you to appoint. And then that engineer carries the ball from there. He does the specifications, watches over the construction, makes sure that everything is done proper, and then signs off on it at the end. There are people that end up wanting to do the construction. There's small companies in Clark Summit like K&K Sprinklers, and there's big ones like Simplex Grinnell that are down in Harrisburg. They only do really, really big jobs. But it does take submitting the hydraulic calculations to the insurance company, and there's a lot to get everything ready to go to bid, and then solicit the different contractors. That's where you need an engineer that does this all the time. He's a subspecialist.
And right now, you guys are working with our water
Yes.
testing issues.
They do all our
Yes, but
environmental testing.
I work in the engineering community, so I know that there's not a lot of people that do this in our area. It is something where you go down toward Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Baltimore. There's a lot of people that graduate from the engineering schools down there. They have their master's degree in this, and then they go to work for insurance companies or companies like Simplex Grinnell, that they provide these complicated systems, dry systems, wet systems. So they end up that they have the credentials and the background to do this quickly. I don't know who, but I'll work with Paul to be able to make sure that whoever he brings to will be well qualified.
Okay.
And just as far as our current relationship with an engineer goes, based on the information that Mr. Audi provided, it seems as though there is no issue in moving away from that relationship. And that is, like, the projects that are outstanding, that were originally proposed, either were tabled and we did not move forward or have been completed. Am I?
We just discussed this today with Mr. Laffey, so I'm going to let him speak a little bit to that. Our question to him was, are we all paid with the projects that Hunt Engineer has done for us, so.
Yeah, some of the proposals that were accepted by the board had multiple levels of it. As you noted, maybe we didn't get through the full scope of the project, but as of today, we've made, I think we have 2 more payments due for some of the planning or report gathering work that they had, and they went out this afternoon.
And in terms of the way this is written here about notice that needs to be given, is that something we need to vote on, or is that simply we can sever this relationship with this company based on the terms set forth in the original contract?
I would like Mr. Audit to answer that, so if that's something we can discuss with him.
Okay.
The 7-day, the letter, those types of things would, yes, so I'd like him to be part of that conversation.
Thank you very much. Water quality?
Act 39 requires schools to do testing each year, or if they don't do it, to provide a reason why. We do our testing each December. The associates from Guzik came in this year, they did it in December 26th, 27th, and 30th, and we started getting initial results from that on January 9th. As results were coming in, and that's not final reports, as they would send the information out to the lab, if a sink or a fountain came back with an elevated lead level, they would immediately send us an email and we would take action. I got the final reports from Guzik for all of our facilities today. As of right now, there are 38 sinks or fountains that had a lead level that required action. Now, action can be a couple things. You can just make sure that the sink is properly labeled, because even with higher lead, you can use it for washing your hands, you can use it for washing dishes, but you can't use it to cook, you can't use it to drink, obviously. Now, certainly, I'm always gonna err on the side of caution. Like, my first instinct is, we're shutting them all down. So we went around, I think as of right now, there are 33 out of the 38 that were identified that we shut off. The ones that are still on, 2 of them, it's a plumbing issue. They don't have shut-off valves, so we're engaging a plumber to shut off the school, install a valve, shut off water supply to the school, shut off, install a valve and turn water supply back on, so we can take that out of service. The other 3 are in kitchen areas that are utilized by Airmarks for washing dishes, and they have been properly notified. Obviously, they can't cook with that water, but certainly they have to be able to wash their equipment. It's funny because it's scattered across 9 schools, so there's 38 issues in 9 schools. The other schools were perfectly fine. In the first report I received from Guzik on the 9th, they said you might want to go back and look at the 2018 report. That was actually, pretty good advice, because I went back and I found some things that, in the final report they issued in March of 18, that, quite honestly, it wasn't addressed. So we addressed those, immediately. And I appreciate them sharing that information. Also, the Act 39, which was enacted in 2018, requires that you have to report the lead levels, the excessive lead levels, to the Pennsylvania Department of Education. They actually maintain a website where if you log on, if you Google PDE and lead in water, it'll take you right to their website where you can see every school in the state and every location within that school that tested high for lead. It's an extensive list. Scranton did not report last year. Upon finding this out, I filed the 2018 report. That probably went into the state, I want to say mid-January. After receiving the final reports for 2019, today for our most recent testing, I will be compiling that list and sending it off to PDE.
What's the deadline to send that out to you?
It's after you get your results. Like, they update that list quarterly.
Okay. I know this wasn't, you weren't in this position at that time.
Right.
How late were we with the 2018 report?
A year, a full year.
Okay, full year.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of penalty?
No, I mean, I reached out and I said, hey, they weren't submitted, and you know what, I didn't even ask that question, to be perfectly honest. I said, it wasn't submitted, I want to make sure they get submitted. I said that there's currently a new administration, and I'm trying to do what's right. And certainly do what's right is always number one, take care of kids. That's always number one. And then, certainly any regulatory things we have to take care of. Moving forward, 38 is a big number. We're talking 33 sinks and 5 fountains. That's a big number across 9 buildings. And now we're starting to look at different kind of filtration systems maybe we could utilize on some of those sinks and fountains. That's not as straightforward as you would think. Ironically, I would think, let's get filters on and then we'll change them monthly. And then we got into, we were talking to some people about that, and it was, well, you gotta use a different one for hot than you do for cold. And I was like, hold up, let me get them shut off. Let's take care of all this. Let's revisit that once we have all our ducks in a row. Now that we have our final reports, from Guzik, I think we can make a plan moving forward. But certainly, I don't know if anyone ever stood up here and addressed the board like this before, and I think it's something that everybody needs to know.
Yeah, no, thank you for finding out that we didn't file and submitting it quickly.
I mean, there was no testing in 17. I don't think it was the law in 17. I think that Act 39 was enacted in 18. There was testing in 16, but certainly I can't stipulate as to what occurred with that.
But right now, everything that was identified is shut off. Everything is completely labeled, other than those.
Yep. I mean, I've been keeping such a documented list of by day, by time, exactly what we've been doing with that. Absolutely.
And thank you for that, board. As we've been giving the updates for this, it's been very clear that you have been very proactive. The administration's been enormously proactive in dealing with this, and it's good to know. It's a credit to the way you responded to this crisis.
I'm a lifelong city resident. I have kid, my son graduated from West. I have a daughter at West Grand High School. This is about kids.
Yeah.
It's not about any of the adults in this room. It's about kids, and we have to just do what's right for them.
Question. So, as I was reading the materials that had to do with this issue, I was wondering, is the lead, because it was like certain faucets in certain schools, it's like it wasn't like across the board, like every fountain and every, and so does it have to do with where the water is coming from, or does it have to do with maybe the pipes and the plumbing because they were made from lead in like mid-century? Like I know like it was like South Intermediate and Bancroft, those schools are like 1930s, 1940s, I'm assuming one of those.
I'll kick that question right to.
Actually, it's turning out to be not the old pipes, right? But
it's not the old pipes, it's the fittings. Connect the copper pipe to the faucet where the valve that turns. And they're made out of something that won't corrode so easily, brass or bronze. And in that, there's a little bit of lead. So when the water sits there overnight, it ends up, the lead leaches out of that brass fitting. Nowadays, all of the fixtures that are sold, they advertise them, no lead. So you end up that you buy a new water fountain, and there's no components in it that have this. It's not allowed anymore to sell that stuff. So now as it sits overnight, it takes a while for that lead to leach out in a concentration where it tries to go homogeneously into the water, as nature would have it. So it ends up that in some cases it builds up to a concentration. If you end up that you take that first drink, you're getting the lead dose. The lead is a bioaccumulator in your body. Okay, so you don't want to keep doing that first drink. After you run that for 30 seconds, there's fresh water from the copper pipe. So the rest of the day it's okay, but you don't take that kind of a chance, especially in schools, which is the reason why they came out in 2018 with the regulation that said you have to do the testing, or you have to end up publicizing that you're not doing it, and let all the parents and kids know you're just not doing it. They're shaming you into self-policing. That's the way it's working.
But at the moment, we're safe. The kids are safe. The lead is not going in the water.
Yes, there's
And
transparency
you're going to come back to us
and
with
action plan.
You're going to come back to us with an action plan.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions?
Did the one paperwork did something say that you were able to do 30-second flushing if you wanted to, or?
We can, but my fear is like, I picture a 7-year-old going to a water fountain, and they're not, like, the instinct isn't gonna be to run it for 30 seconds.
No, I definitely agree, which is why I feel like it's interesting that you could have that option if you wanted.
You could, I mean, you could do 30-second flush testing. Ideally, you know, what we're gonna end up doing is when we started developing maintenance plans
You
for all
said
of our
7
buildings.
because my daughter's 7, right?
No. Yeah, elementary school guy. We also started developing maintenance plans for each specific building. So with general, with preventive maintenance, but also, the general things, but also specifics for the building. But what's gonna be in these maintenance plans is we gotta set up a schedule where they're flushing our water supplies. I mean, is that happening in some buildings? Yeah, it might be, but it's probably not consistently, and I doubt it's being documented. So we need to come up with a plan that, hey, on the first of every month or on the first of every quarter, and certainly I'll work with them because they'll provide us some guidance as to what the best plan is, that, hey, on the first day of the quarter, these are the steps we're gonna follow. And if we're flushing those pipes regularly, that's gonna greatly reduce, the levels that are gonna, right now there's 38. That doesn't mean there can't be another 38, next December when it's tested, if we don't implement some kind of plan to ensure that doesn't happen.
Well, this testing you said was done the 26th, the 27th, and the 30th, right? And
Of
school-
December, yes.
And the school went out, that's at least a week
School's
after.
out on the 23rd.
Yes.
The 23rd, so that probably
Mhm.
exacerbated the problem even more, I would have thought, but,
Worst case analysis.
Absolutely.
well, it's better that we know. It's better that we know, than we don't come back after summer and the postal kid comes in after 3 months and has a nice more lead than in wider bullets. Fair enough, let's go.
Thank you. Okay. Are you bringing it on home here? Asbestos update.
All right, asbestos. Again, my good friends from Guzik, they, by the way, I call them every day, every single day, at least once. Brent and I talked at length yesterday. Asbestos testing is done in our buildings every 3 years. It was done in 2016, it was done again in 2019. We started getting the reports, I want to say, September-ish, September, October, in that neighborhood. We get a different testing book for every facility that we have. There were some things that we remediated immediately. In fact, 5 things were remediated just this fall. The rest, in speaking with them, it's funny this is all coming up now, because we've actually been working on this. I've met with them a couple times about, we're actually putting together, a bid package, so we can solicit bids for this work. Now when you look, asbestos is graded on a 1 to 7, and guys, I'm way out over my skis on this, so jump in. So it's graded on a 1 to 7. So when you start looking at what needs to be done, I would say, your 1s and 2s you have to get done in a removal priority. Gotta happen. I would think in best case scenario, you want your 3s and maybe your 4s. Right now, for the areas that are graded 1 through 4, there's 202 items that were identified across 15 schools. Now, older schools, you're gonna have asbestos. Now, some of these things are big areas, big ticket items, like flooring in the entire 1906 section of the Northeast Intermediate is a good example. The square footage on that, I couldn't even fathom on that. Some of the things could be handled very, very quickly. It's gonna be a big number. I mean, I don't know how to say it. Like, I'm confident that, our kids are safe. I mean, there's issues at the majority of our schools, and there's issues, at West High, and I'm still letting my daughter go to school there every day. Because I think that things that were emergent, I think we dealt with. That being said, I don't think it would be a bad idea if we started looking to do some air quality around the district. I think that would go a long way. I'll give you a good example. We had an issue in South, I want to say in October, in the fan room at South, where, working around some of mechanical things were ones and pipes had asbestos on it, needed to be remediated, and it was in the fan room, which circulates throughout the whole building, so we did baseline testing before it was remediated in the building, we did testing after, and the building was clear. But that might not be a bad idea to do district-wide, because certainly we know when I stand up here and say we found, 202 asbestos issues that need to be remediated, obviously parents are gonna be concerned. And, maybe we can put their minds at ease a little bit if we get some air quality testing throughout the buildings.
Is that something that can be done quickly, that
Again,
can be
I-
done?
It's a 2-hour test for each one. If we did 3 or 4 on each, in the hallway on each floor, it can't be done real quick, no. We could go as fast as we could.
This would also be provided by Cruise.
If that's what they want.
If we engage them to do that, yes.
Have you done the testing in the past?
Oh,
Yes. Yes. Maybe we need a proposal.
So, yeah, I think some information about what that would look like and cost and timeline and all that would be helpful.
At this point, I think the benefit to that is, if it comes back elevated, then we know we need to take action immediately. If we don't, we could look at an extended break. We could look at doing a significant portion of this over the course of the summer. And to be perfectly honest with you, 202, you probably can't do it over the summer anyway. And maybe it's gonna come back that we don't need to really look at the 4s right now, because that is not like a significant issue. And guys, please correct me if I'm wrong, but there's, out of the 202, 96 of them are a level 4 and a removal priority. So all of a sudden that's cut in half. But certainly, we're gonna put all that in front of you, so you can make an informed decision. If you have any questions for these guys, please ask, because if you ask me on another date, I'm not gonna know.
I completely understand. I'm sorry, I knew that information at last week's meeting, I can't help you now.
So I guess my question that I need answer to is, we are recommending air quality testing. So, what exactly are you looking for from us?
I think the information about the timeline and the cost, and
Okay.
if that
So
can be in our packets, that
We can move forward, okay. So we can get that, you can get that together for us? Yes, please.
And I think it's a good idea you're going through which ones are the most severe cases, and you have
That's
that.
right. You take your 1s and 2s, you make them the priority as far as taking a look-see on this air quality. Maybe you also do some further physical examinations to be able to assess this is more important than that. And we would hope that we would get good passing results back on the asbestos. We don't want to get bad results, but they are what they are when we get them from the lab. If the lab ends up giving us bad news, that moves up on the list. That ends up that it might have to be addressed before we get to the summer on an emergency basis. But by doing simple testing, we can end up getting a good body of information of where we stand today. And then ending a good result on that, we can put together the specifications for abating certain areas that are 1s and 2s over the summertime when the schedule works for all of us.
So it's basically triage.
It is. Very, very good analogy.
I have a quick question, just when we were originally talking about the oil rigs and such in Lincoln Jackson, I was looking into different information, and all these grants came up through the Environmental Protection Agency. I know some of the things we do has to be more fast-paced, but even just, I was just curious, and there's some things that come up for this factor with grants with the EPA. Do we ever look into any of that with any of these air quality or issues that we have?
Right.
Yeah, but through the Environmental Protection Agency, it seems like a lot of these things, there's potential grant money available.
There definitely is. I think people were talking about that.
One of the problems that you're all inheriting is this was an issue in schools, and back in the late 80s, all schools were to have taken care of their asbestos, either encapsulate it or remove it. And every year after that, you were supposed to send in a report investigating that, because maybe you encapsulated and then you decided that you wanted to add on. So That's what schools were supposed to do, all schools, not, Scranton was not excluded from that. But that did not happen here, so you're the lucky board that now has to deal with it. That was in, I believe, 1988?
1988, the Ahern Act, right?
1988. So
We did test, right? We tested in 88, correct?
I
We
was,
tested.
I,
No, I know
1988
you
is
didn't
on
do
these
it,
documents.
but I think there was 88, yes.
Yeah, that's the first test in July of 1988.
this should have been taken care of a long time ago.
So if we're to be proactive and get moving so if we do the air quality test, and then I'm gonna look at you, Mr. Guzik, I would feel more comfortable if if we spec'd out immediately the 1s and 2s. And then we were able to get moving on those very fast. And then, when we talk about a plan for the summer, then, if it's appropriate, and again, tell me if I'm wrong, because this is certainly not my specialty, if 3s and 4s were appropriate for the summer, but I want to get the 1s and 2s taken care of. So,
I agree.
I'm feeling a sense of urgency, so, if we were
The
to
summer will be here before we know it,
Uh.
and especially with the process of writing the specifications for the case-by-case specifics, and then putting it out for bid and getting the bids back and going through that process. We've already started at my office the process of getting this machine rolling.
Okay.
So what we need to do, if there is an area where children are in that area, and it's a 1 or a 2, or even a 3 or 4, we need to remove those children from that area, because that is, I think, an important step that we can make. For example, I know there's a ceiling in a gym area that, on our tour, we heard that there was asbestos there. So we need to not allow children to use that area. That is my recommendation. We cannot take a chance with this. It's long overdue for handling, and we need to handle it in an expedited way.
And, is that something that needs to go through the principals? They need to understand
Yes.
what
Yes.
those things are and
Yes.
be instructed to
Yes, and we're
handle
working
them
through that.
appropriately.
We're working through that list.
Paul,
Yes.
today you emailed us a list of those projects. And I tried to print it out, but it kind of printed out like a mask of mat around it, and I couldn't read it.
Okay.
Would you
You want a copy? You want a copy?
I would love, well, I would. I find that quite often when I
Sure.
get those
Absolutely.
things, that when I actually print them, because I can't work off a screen, genetic mutation didn't happen yet. So I just really couldn't read it, but I noticed that you've got that, and it's a great document, and it seems to me like we've taken some really positive steps forward. But if you wouldn't mind
No problem,
being
no
able
problem at
to
all.
give us readable printouts of the 202.
Absolutely.
I did endeavour to decipher the 86 pages, but I gave up and went to the Cliff Notes.
And when you start looking at it, I'm sure that you saw it, it's, there's a couple buildings that have lots.
North was like, went on. I could read that because that was in big print. North just kind of went on and on and on and on and on, and it was very frightening.
Like there was 46 at Northeast.
It was
That's
considered
almost,
the
that's
miracle
almost
fiber.
25%.
Lots
That's a
of
sign of good construction in that day, back in the
A
50s.
lot of that's flooring. A lot of that is fittings around, insulation around pipes. And that's the ceilings, the walls. Like you can't hammer into the walls because there's asbestos in the walls. It's a lot of those things.
So is our first action to get quotes on air quality?
Yes. I mean, yeah, we're gonna go ahead.
We'll address the 1s and 2s first with their quality and
Yeah, I'm talking
get
about,
those.
do we need, are we already in a contract with Guzik for air quality testing, or are we getting?
I don't believe.
No.
I don't believe so.
We'll prepare some kind of a proposal and send it into Paul for you. And then we'll get ready to end up doing that as we're working two different sides of the tracks. Specifications, on what we have to do and getting ready for that. And the second will be doing anything on the air quality, and if that comes back hot, then we address that before we get to the summer.
You know, typically we do a lot of our air quality testing after we identify an area to be remediated. This gives us the opportunity to know where we need to target our attention, because like there's 202 just levels 1 through 4. There's 85 pages of actual items in levels 1 through 7. Like this is going to give us a real, it's going to mark where we need to start. And hopefully it doesn't. I mean, to be perfectly honest, hopefully it all comes back clean and then we can just proceed as we want. But this is going to give us an opportunity to focus our attention, at least in the short term, where it needs to be focused.
Okay, well, that sounds, we have a plan. Like Pinky in the Brain, we have a plan.
So we haven't been testing on this, correct?
There was testing in 2016.
Okay, yeah, you said it.
And I don't want to speak for the associates from Guzik, but, and again, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, the reports are very similar.
That's correct. What was said before ends up being the same thing that we're saying 3 years later or whatever, 2 years later, when we repeated the surveys. And they are just physical surveys where we express a concern and rated 1 through 7. Now some of them might be 7 where it's asbestos above that ceiling in a pipe. There's probably not too much, even if it was friable, there's not too much risk of it becoming airborne out here in our breathing zones. So that's got a low priority of being addressed. So you can have asbestos in your buildings. And the job of doing the every year a survey, every so often to be able to present a follow-up document is to say, remember that's up there. Don't drill holes up there. When you got people coming in to do some service work and they're gonna put in a new TV situation here, they've gotta do it according to our maintenance plan where they don't spread this stuff around, they're protected, our desks and everything else are protected. They've gotta end up having the right training, the right equipment to do that work and everything. It's not just poke and hope. So that's part of where you don't take out everything in schools. EPA doesn't recommend that. Full encapsulation is a good way. Even some of the tiles that you might have asbestos in it, the mastic that is on the other side, if it's in good shape, there's no need to end up yanking it out right away. It'll fall into disrepair in the future, and then it's time to pull it out or encapsulate it over again. But for the time being, there's maintenance that you can do to keep that in good shape without any chance of fibers being made airborne into the breathing zone.
So federally per the guidelines, so we need management plans to prevent or reduce. So in 2016, we don't have a management plan.
Yeah, management plan.
There's management plans.
Okay.
I don't know if they were executed.
Okay.
I went searching for documentation as to what was done, and quite honestly, I can't produce documentation. I can't say what was done or what wasn't done. I can tell you that the 16 reports were very similar to the 19 reports.
Well, we have a plan.
We have a plan.
Always a good thing.
Thank you very much.
I'll conclude by saying report cards look stellar. They are out at the schools right now being reviewed. We had a very, very smooth run. We were comparing them to transcripts, we're comparing them to classroom reports. It looks pretty solid right now.
That's a huge achievement.
Huge.
We read this time last
Huge.
year.
Huge.
Well done.
Well done,
everyone.
See, start good and good. Start APs and with report cards.
If I could just make a comment, and everybody knows I'm not one to speak all the time, but the amount of work that he has done on all of this and trying to, the amount of work that hadn't been done and is being done now. So thank you to Paul, managing through the
I have just one major concern, is that if we break him, we're gonna need to bring him. So just be sure we don't break him.
I'm good, I'm good.
Thank you very much. Okay. Budget and finance.
For our meeting for February 3rd, we'll have a resolution to approve the bill list that will be put on our consent agenda. We'll have a resolution to approve the exception bill list, approve delinquent tax reports, approve treasury reports, approve repository sales, approve budget transfers, and that will all be included on the consent agenda. Then we'll have a resolution to appoint the tax collection committee. If you want to have a little discussion on this.
Sure. Do we want to talk about that? The representatives?
Mr. Laffey, when looking at the tax collection committee, I mean, historically it's been budget and finance members, possibly someone from the business office. Is this, I don't know how much time you have in your day, but is this something that you would like to continue to be a part of?
Yeah, certainly. I think the format that we have now, where, as you noted, I think the primary delegate would be the chairman of the Budget and Finance Committee. Another representative of the board would be the first delegate, and I think for the last couple of years, I, myself, or someone from the business office has served as that second delegate in the event that the primary and the first do not attend.
I mean, I'm fine with moving forward in that direction.
So we will ask Mrs. Yanni if she's comfortable. Mrs. Yanni?
Yes, I'm here and I am comfortable with that.
Okay, very good. Wonderful.
All right. I've been a member of this for the last 2 years, I guess. I mean, there's not too many meetings, would you say? How many, a handful in a year?
Yeah, actually, we were scheduled to have one on Thursday, and I just received an email that it's been canceled due to, I think, a lack of business to conduct.
They did appoint a tax appeals subcommittee to that.
And you've been serving on that?
Yes, I haven't seen anything lately. Maybe with some of the lawsuits come out.
So you'd like to continue with that, and we'll have Mrs. Yanni serve as the first delegate as chairman of Budget and Finance. You will stay as second, Pat will be third.
Correct.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then we'll have a resolution to appoint the land bank representative. Now, this one, how many representatives have been on? I feel like there was 4 last year.
We had 2 and never replaced. So I've been the only one going, and I would be very happy to continue. So if anybody else is interested, if you want to express interest.
And the meetings are at what?
The meetings are usually at 9 or 9:15 on the second Friday of the month, I believe. So we can, I also want to give Mr. Malloy a chance to look into some of these things, and see all the exciting things you might want to sign up for, right? So if we can get these names together during the week, so.
Yeah, the biggest barrier with that one is the time.
Right.
I'm operations, which is building and grounds, if that makes any sense. I'm probably the only one who doesn't have a real job. So if nobody, I'm happy to do that. I have no idea what it entails.
Where are the meetings held?
They are held at the county building.
So, I mean, I'm not leaping forward with
You are willing.
like enthusiasm.
Yes, I
but
understand.
If there is no one else.
I understand.
Thank you.
I think in the past I've always volunteered if someone wasn't available, I'd go. However, I've not.
And I do think
not attended.
we've maybe had an alternate, so
Yeah.
certainly. Okay, thank you.
And then that's all.
Okay. Ms. Gilmar,
Yes.
late this afternoon, I'm sorry, today I received an email from Solicitor Audi's office related to some appraisal proposals for real estate tax appeals. I was not able to get to Ms. Orr to get it on the agenda tonight, but I wanted to make you aware of it. I'll be reviewing that tomorrow, so there's a potential that for the meeting on next Monday, there will be a few appraisals related to the tax assessment appeals.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Lappy, I forgot that when I had it on my other.
No problem.
And that will be per the parameters we've set
Yes, again, I have to take another look at it, but I know you've authorized Solicitor Alley's firm to engage appraisal services if the assessment change was gonna be over a certain percentage, so I have to look into that a little bit.
Thank you.
That is all.
Okay. Mrs. Dixon?
Are we doing Ms. Fox first?
Oh, yes, we are. Sorry, I skipped. Ms. Fox?
Okay. So just, do we have a resolution to appoint a shared service representative?
Yes. Yes, so we will talk about those names as well. Okay, Mrs. Dixon?
We will have a resolution to recognize, is it Katona?
Katona Miller, yes.
Katona Miller, finalist for Teacher of the Year. We will have a resolution to approve permissions to attend on the consent agenda. We have a resolution to approve out-of-state field trips for West Granton High School to New York City, again on the consent. A resolution to approve out-of-state field trip for West Granton High School to Camden, New Jersey. And a resolution to approve school calendars for 2021 and 2020-21 and 2021-22 school years, and those two are on consent as well. Technology, discussion, possible resolution to approve E-rate, category 2 bids.
Do we have a discussion on that?
Yeah, Paul and I will kind of take this together. Well, I'll talk about the funding for it, he can talk about the technology piece of it. So the school district participates in the E-rate reimbursement program. There's two sections, there's category 1, which is related to your telecommunications and internet. We receive a 90% reimbursement on our internet services through the category 1. So that was bid out, I believe, 3 years ago, and I think we're under contract or have locked in that rate until 2023. So just to put that into perspective, it's about a savings of about $292,000 a year that we receive on that E-rate reimbursement. The second part, what we're bringing for you tonight, is related to category 2, which is more focused on the equipment side of it. Currently, right now, there is E-rate will pay 85% of E-rate eligible equipment. This is a kind of a use it or lose it year where they've increased our funding to $195.63 per student, effective for the 21-22 fiscal year. The rate per student will be $167. There was a one-time 20% kind of bump to the rate for the students. So Mr. Doherty, along with the IT staff, have put together some needs that are related to UPSs, wireless access points, and some switches. The total purchase price would be $274,791. E-rate would cover 85% of that, leaving the district share of $41,218.
Basically, we get to make major upgrades to our network and provide, Universal Power, we have backups on our equipment at a fraction of the cost, paying 15 cents on the dollar. Our classroom technology right now is higher than it's ever been. And every time we add more, we got to add more access points. This is going to allow us to, what would cost us $156,000 for access points, we're only paying 15% of that cost. So basically, like Pat said, we're getting $275,000 worth of equipment for $41,000. That's a significant savings, and certainly that's something I can cover out of the IT budget. But that's going to help our network tremendously.
Yes, the total equipment budget for the IT department is $386,000, so he has enough to cover the 41.
Okay. Sounds good.
At some point, you talked about this with shared services, sharing some of this with the city. Is this overlap in any way, do we think, or do you think this is just strictly school district?
This is like UPS's is going to provide backup for our current equipment that was also purchased through E-rate, and the access points. It's almost like we can't put them up fast enough now, and that's strictly for our own buildings. I don't see how that one would overlap.
Yeah, no, that answered my question. I just want to make sure it's said.
I think E-rate was only for schools and libraries. I don't think the city has access to it, actually. One point about the calendars, you asked us to investigate an evening parent conference night, and we were able to work with Ms. Boland and the union to accomplish that. So each calendar has one evening of parent conferences.
We might be able to see if we can get some increased participation there.
I think that's what we'll do.
I think, most parents are there, so. Yeah, we appreciate the SFT,
that's great.
and Ms. Bowen working with us.
Yeah.
So, that's reflective in the calendar for this year. And I want to thank Robert Gentilesa, Bert, as we all know him, because he worked on these calendars and came up with, I think it might be our earliest graduation date ever. So, so that was our goal, so he did a great job.
Thank you. Nothing? Nothing for operations? Nothing for operations.
Actually, before we move on to
Yes.
operations, when it comes to music, how did we acquire them into the district?
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know, I mean, I honestly, I wouldn't even know. I just, I know their name because I've been.
Yeah, I mean, they've been testing, but we've never really,
Yes.
I don't think we've ever put any of those services on the bid, have we?
Well, last year we bid the environmental services. Now, again, as Paul noted, this is not my area of expertise exactly what they're performing and what our service spec, but we had no responses to it. Now, it could be missed, we advertised in the newspaper for the required 3 weeks as we were supposed to. Unfortunately, maybe that should have, we should have sent them in directly, but we did bid for the service last year just without response, similar to the integrated pest management.
Yeah, I remember that one specifically. Do we think it's something we need to do?
Well, alls I ask is, until this is all straightened out, we don't switch or change or
Yeah, I
while
know
we're
the
working.
water situation is where we're at with that.
I think the concern I certainly have, I think as we're looking at these other firms that we're gonna work with, I mean, I certainly see the value in continuing this service. These seem to be trustworthy people who understand the emergency that we face and, see the sense of urgency in everything we're doing. But I think as we're bringing in these other people with the air quality testing, for example, if that is another party, I think if some proposals can, even if it's something as simple as when we get 3 bids for a smaller job, just to have some more information. Even what he was saying about, there might only be one firm here and there is no one who wants to see people support local companies and work with local businesses because it all works with taxes. But Philadelphia is not that far away. If there are other firms that can be considered as well, I realize that could be a totally different price structure as well. I just think the phone calls need to be made or the emails sent, just to make sure that we're getting some options for these
Yeah,
things.
and as I'm seeing these projects getting larger and larger as we're going through the discussion, I want to just make sure the taxpayers get the right.
Absolutely, and I think that the services they've been providing for years are, I don't even know what it costs. I mean, I don't think it's a huge number that's coming out of the operations budget. I think this year's a little different because we're actually taking action. So now we're engaging them to help with the bid spec, and that's gonna, it's gonna cost money. And but in their defense, I'll say this, and and I'm all for, obviously we have a policy we have to follow. I would not be able to stand up here and speak to you intelligently about this without how much, they've actually been a partner in this. They answer my questions, and I talked with them probably for over an hour yesterday, on Sunday. Just making sure that I stand here and present you clear information. And having Mr. Guzik here, some of the conversations he just engaged in, we kind of have to make sure that we see this through before we take any action.
And I certainly think there's a benefit to continuing to work with the company that perhaps saw these issues not addressed as they should have been, and now see these plans being put into place and implemented. I'm sure that's a help as well.
Yeah, don't take what I'm saying as criticism.
No.
As I'm seeing this get
No.
larger and larger, I just wanna make sure we're
I
getting
mean,
the best price.
I would love to have an environmental testing company that we just could utilize. I mean, that would be ideal if we could put out bids for that. I'd also like to see like an environmental remediation company, if we could put out, bids for that, or we could agree to a rate, so now when something does happen, we're not chasing 3 bids, because we've already accepted, somebody to be our primary provider, where we can get immediate action. Right, right.
And then I'm not calling you in a panic, because I need to get this done, and I have to say, at the end of the day, and
So
I
maybe
will,
that's a nice idea that came up, that maybe we could move further.
I totally agree. Alls I ask is if we can see this project through, because they did the 16, they did the 19. They've been helping, like I said, I don't know that, I go to Paul goes to them, that's been how it's been. So they've helped, they've been a partner. So if we could just see these things that we're working on right now, if we could please see these through, and then we will do whatever the board wishes. That's all my recommendation.
Yeah, I think maybe as the next job, like right now we're midstream here, as the next
Yes.
job comes up or the
Yeah,
next
I mean,
area comes
like
up.
a good example is, we've been using almost the same company for a lot of our remediation work, it's damage control, and they've been great to deal with, and we get bids every time, they're always always. And they've been great to work.
And they're the people, when we pick up the phone, they're not, I'll get to you in a week. They're there that day somehow, somewhere. There's just in my limited time in this seat, I can tell you the people that I can count on, because we pick up the phone and they're there. Whereas others are like, yeah, we'll be there, and it's a week later, and we're still waiting for them to just put in a bid. So
if we could get a company like that to actually bid like an hourly rate for remediation services and put it out there, that would save us a ton of time. And quite honestly, in a situation where you have to take action.
Good idea.
If I can just say one thing, not to jump back to the E-rate again, but I think I failed to mention that the products were bid. It was done through a PEPM mini bid. If I didn't say that, if I didn't make that clear.
Personnel?
So with the personnel, we do have a resolution to approve the personnel report, which includes assignments and appointments, retirements, leaves of absences, and resignations. I did send an email to Mr. Castro-Bench. I don't know if you want to do a quick review as to what we're looking. I didn't get a chance to read it today because I went right from work right to here.
Yeah, and I saw your email this morning that you sent me Friday night, and today was extremely busy. I did reply. I don't know, did you see my email that I sent to you?
I didn't see the email, but I saw that you replied.
Yeah, okay. So I'd like some clarity, on what the board is looking for the workshop, because I don't think there's ever been a workshop presentation of personnel items, but I'm more than happy to provide the board any information they would like.
When I spoke with you earlier, it was just looking at what are we looking at here? What's the general overview of the personnel report?
There's, we have several leave of absence requests. I'm constantly working with employees who need time off for various reasons, whether it be health related or personal issues they're dealing with. We had a couple of resignations of language guides, so we had to post and fill those positions because they're vital in each school to have someone to interpret and help parents and teachers communicate with one another effectively. We had several coaching resignations, so you were involved with the coaching panel, setting up another one for this week, so I'll be probably reaching out to Rose. I believe Tara, I don't know if she's on vacation, but obviously she's somewhere because she said it was 80 degrees. She's not here. So we have something scheduled for this week.
I know more about softball than I
You
did
did
before.
you did a very nice job, very admirable, and I learned something about cricket as well. So, had one professional resignation, so we're in the process of filling that appointment, and that's really about it. But I do like your idea of adding salaries too. That's not a problem. I'm accustomed to that, and listening.
It's something we've discussed in the past.
Yeah.
We just never got to it, but I think it's a good addition.
And the HR agenda is a working document, so that's something if you want me to send that home, in the board packet, I can do that. It's not an issue. I did put draft on it. So, it's subject to change. Even the dates that are on here, sometimes their plans will change, and they'll say, well, I'm not starting my leave on Monday, I'm starting Wednesday, so then we'll go and, make that change.
Yeah, I mean, we can make that part of your Friday packet, just know that probably that will change the most with what happens in a week here.
The other item we kind of talked about the other night was, I'm not aware that every paid item has been on prior board agendas. And that's something I want to implement. Things I'm thinking of are like summer and winter school. I'm not sure if those items previously had been put on here for board approval. Also temporary maintenance workers, I don't believe that they've been put on here, but my understanding and belief is any paid position should be on there for board approval. And that's something, we will work to do. Just for the board members, I started February, so I've been here almost a year, so.
How about when we do interview for a position, do we have any kind of protocol for contacting the other applicants? That
Yeah, what I've always done in my career and how I've been trained is to contact the successful candidate via phone and have a conversation with them. People who are not successful, I send a letter to.
Okay,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much. Policy?
Hello. So under policy, next week we will have a resolution to approve first read policies 233 and 626, and first read administrative review 200, 201, and 204. And the majority of those policies are student-based, admission, enrollment, expulsion, and suspension, except for policy 626, which has to do with our food services purchasing procedures. And then for discussion, we will discuss the recovery plan policy initiatives. And then under legislative, we will have a resolution to appoint a PSBA representative.
Let me take this?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
So the recovery plan policy initiatives, that I did a quick review, so if I missed a few, I apologize. But I've counted that there's, I believe, 6 different initiatives that require the district to address some of our policies. 4 of them have a timeline of December 31st, 2019. So I wanted to bring this to the board's attention and see where we can possibly move to next. The first one is Initiative Admin 05, which is the district shall dedicate surplus revenues to rebuild budgetary reserves under requirement of the fund balance policy. And then the fund balance policy, it states that the district shall adopt a more robust fund balance management policy. We currently do have a fund balance policy. I've been working on it. I've reviewed it with Dr. Fine and Missy as well, and we have some recommendations on how to, build that up a little bit. The next one is under Initiative Admin 06, which is the board shall develop and adopt a debt management policy. So currently, I cannot find in our policies that we have one of those. So we've reviewed other school districts and have compiled what we feel would be a pretty thorough one. We were going to share that with representatives from PFM as well to get their opinion. The next one is HR 04. The district shall prepare a policy to be adopted by the school board regarding the use of direct deposit and ACH payments to vendors. Again, that's something that we are in the process of putting together for you. And the last one is Admin 11, and that is related to the district's management practices for the stadium fund and the athletic account. So we currently have a student activity fund that addresses those. There needs to be some work done to it, I think, to align it with the goals and initiatives of the recovery plan, and I'm in the process of kind of tweaking it and making some recommended changes to share with the board.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, Mr. Arthur, could you send me all of that you just sent?
Certainly.
Everything that you have?
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll send a list of this home in the board packet this weekend.
Okay.
Is that right?
And Sarah and I talked about scheduling a policy committee meeting in this next month. I do want to, I forgot Mr. Rowdy was not going to be here this evening because he and I also had a conversation about someone from the firm, Mr. Kahn, David Kahn?
Oh, yeah, David.
Coming to do a parliamentary procedure training. And I thought perhaps we could wrap all of those things into one evening, do the policy committee meeting. I know we also want to talk about policy 610 and the bidding thresholds, and we also want to talk about the way we are dealing with our agendas. And discuss maybe changing some things around. So I think we could get all of those things in one night. She and I did talk about a few dates, but we'll get to Mr. Audi and see if they'll work for him and for Mr. Cohn and go from there. Okay.
So,
I'll follow up with them too.
Thank you.
so this summary will be in your packet this weekend.
Okay, thank you. Special education?
There'll be a resolution to approve a settlement agreement that will be included in the consent agenda.
And vendor relations, Ms. Fox?
Under food services, there'll be a discussion on the resolution on steamer purchase at South Scranton Intermediate School, and a discussion on charitable contribution.
Mr. Laffey?
Again, yes, currently we have 2 steamers at South Intermediate that are down and currently not operational. I think one of them has been down for a few months, the other one I think over a year. Airmark has provided me with some of the repairs that have been conducted on these pieces of equipment the last couple of years, and we're investing significant dollars in the repairs to maintain these. I believe, and I will send this in the board packet, but I believe they're both about 14 years old. They're used, for those who don't know, South Intermediate is our main production kitchen that prepares meals for every school district that doesn't have a full service. I believe it's 8 or 9 schools that we call satellite. So they're producing all the food to be sent to those schools. These steamers are used on a daily basis to prepare anywhere from around 2,200 hot meals a day. So by having these kind of out of working orders put, I think, a little bit of stress on the other pieces of equipment or the operations in the food service department. We were able to get 3 quotes for them based off of state contract pricing, and the price that we received, which, excuse me, sir, was a state contract pricing for $19,625 a piece. To be approved to make a purchase like this, we have to apply to the Division of Food and Nutrition for a capital expenditure authorization. I submitted that to Division of Food and Nutrition on January 10th. It's still in a pending approval status. So if it is approved in the next week, I would like to bring this to the meeting on Monday night for your authorization to move forward, as there will be some lead time in getting this equipment.
And I know we've discussed this before, but this money comes out of
Yes.
the food service.
So the food service fund operates its own fund balance, and any large equipment purchases like this will be funded through those proceeds.
Thank you. And the charitable contribution?
Yes, as you know, policy 702 gifts and donation states that the board must accept or acknowledge, approve the acceptance of a gift. Airmark has made some contributions to us to, encourage participation in the program, to enhance the program, initiatives to improve student engagement. So I'm going to be putting together a summary for you of the dollars that they've allocated to us, what they've been utilized for your consideration at next Monday's meeting.
Anything else good at the order? No. Okay, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn. I'll make a motion. All in favor? Adjourned.